Hey guys, my name is Matsumo, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming or Battlefield-related questions, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the formalities out of the way real quick, if you would like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below, or by sending me a Facebook and Twitter message. The first question for today comes from Matthew, and it is, are you excited for Star Wars Battlefront 3? I'm a bit worried about it after the terrible launch of Battlefield 4. Yeah, I'm definitely a little bit worried about the release of Star Wars Battlefront because while I'm really excited for it, I'm hoping that they nail it out of the park and it's a phenomenal release, that's not the track record for DICE at all. Like, you look back at basically every release that DICE has done over the, it feels like a decade now. Bad Company 2, Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, all of them have been very rocky. Battlefield 3, for example, had loads of issues when it first launched. The beta was bad. Like, they allowed us to play on Metro. People were glitching through walls. There were plenty of issues left and right, and many of those problems transferred on over into the release of the game. They just did not simply have enough time to solve all of these problems in the brief couple of weeks from the beta to the release, and so they had to spend the next couple of months solving a lot of these issues. Granted, it was nowhere near as bad as Battlefield 4. Battlefield 4 is going to go down in the history books as one of the worst released games in a very long time, and developers are already looking at the launch of that game as an example of what not to do. People weren't even able to log in for Battlefield 4. They would get into a round, play for 5 minutes, and then crash to desktop. This wasn't just a few people either. This was widespread. Like, this was a known issue. I don't know what consoles were like. I think that they were a little bit more stable, but still, it was an issue over there as well. Like, it was terrible. It was a really bad launch. To this day, Battlefield 4 is now a great game. Like, it is a very, very good first-person shooter, but it took them almost an entire year to get it to the point where it is at the state that it is right now. That is what I do not want for Star Wars Battlefront 3. Like, I want an amazing game, a stable game at release. And DICE's track record, as I said, is worrisome. If they don't and they have another botched release, it is going to do a terrible amount of damage to the image of not only EA, but especially DICE. They are eventually going to be known as a developer that cannot deliver on their promises and just can't create a stable product at day one. That's eventually going to hurt their sales. If consumers do not have any faith in that company and they don't have any faith in them releasing a stable product, eventually it's going to bite them in the ass and they're just not going to make as much money as that they were hoping for because their image has been tarnished. And so I'm hoping that that is going to be enough incentive for them to want to create and launch a stable product. I know that sounds a little absurd and you would assume that the higher-ups would want to have that as a normal policy, but as I mentioned, this has been a known issue from DICE Stockholm. It has been a known problem, and so while I am very excited about the new Star Wars game, I think that it has the potential to be amazing. At the end of the day, I'm not going to be pre-ordering. Hopefully you guys will not be pre-ordering as well because of the very lackluster track record that DICE has had. The next question for today comes from Andrew, and it is, what do you think about having dead bodies and destroyed vehicles staying on the map for the entirety of the match? I think it would really add in a dramatic effect of the game because as the game progresses, the battlefield will look more devastated by death and destruction. Well, conceptually, this sounds really cool and probably would add in a different dynamic to the game that we don't already experience. I mean, we kind of already do. If you are next to a tank that just blew up, you can use it as cover. Like if you are trying to maybe duck and weave out of the line of sight of another enemy tank or some infantry, if there is a flaming carcass on the ground, a helicopter or another tank, you can use that to your advantage. And so if they would stay on the map the entire time, or maybe only blow up if you fire a rocket at them, then that would of course change the entire landscape for the entire map. That could be pretty cool. Like, that would make every single match that you play on completely different from the previous ones because basically the landscape would be dynamically changing depending on where vehicles were being destroyed. So that could be pretty cool, but at the same time, we also have to remember that that probably would just destroy people's computers. The reason why all of this carnage eventually disappears on your screen is because if it stayed, that would be more and more that your computer or your console would have to render out. By the end of a 20 to 30 minute match, can you imagine the amount of bodies that would be littered everywhere? Sure, it would give you a better immersion to the horrors of war. Seeing all of this death and destruction, it would give you a real sense as to what happens in reality. I mean, especially if there's like a World War II game, that would give you a real sense of what was going on during that time period. But you also have to remember that that would just destroy people's PCs. Like, I don't even know if my hardware would be able to render out and maintain a solid frame rate and not just chug and lag everywhere if all of this death and destruction was maintained or didn't slowly disappear over time. Not only that, but it also probably wouldn't be all that great from a gameplay standpoint. One tactic that I could easily see a lot of people using is that if they're playing on a map that has some choke points where a lot of dead bodies will eventually accumulate, well, they could just go prone in all of those bodies, act as a dead soldier, and so as soon as an enemy rounds the bend or tries to go down a long hallway on Metro or Locker, for example, the enemy will just see a bunch of dead bodies. They won't immediately see you like they normally would have been able to, like we have right now in Battlefield 4. You'll have the advantage, and then you could probably just easily take them out. I don't know if that would be something that would be all that enjoyable. So eventually it would just turn into you shooting at dead bodies constantly. And I know that some of you may try to make the argument that that could be something that you would see in the horrors of war, like and maybe in very desperate situations a soldier will hide himself among the bodies of the fallen. But come on, like we're playing a video game, and I think that would be pushing things just too far. And so while I like your idea, conceptually it does sound interesting, from a hardware standpoint, I just don't think that PCs and the consoles would have enough horsepower to even render out all that death and carnage, but also from a gameplay standpoint, I just don't think that is what people are looking for. The next question for today comes from Philip, and it is, what if the support class could use a handgun while using the Riot Shield? Would it be too overpowered or make people use the shield more? Well, if I remember right, and I'm not going crazy, I think that when DICE was initially coming up with concepts on how they wanted to add in the Riot Shield, this was one of their first ideas. They, of course, wanted it to be very defensive. They wanted you to catch some bullets for your teammates or use this to push up on an objective where you normally wouldn't have been able to, but also having the capabilities of maybe peeking your head out using the pistol to dispatch of some unsuspecting victims. And honestly, this would have been a great way at elevating the power of this gadget. I think it's pretty much the general consensus of the Battlefield community by now that the Riot Shield is fairly useless. Like, I would classify it, and I'm sure many of you would also classify it, as a gimmick in the game. Maybe in some circumstances, especially if you're playing on a server that doesn't allow for explosive devices, then I guess it could maybe allow you to push up onto an MCOM that you normally wouldn't have been able to. But even on maps where you would assume that it would do very well on, like Metro or Locker, where everything is coming from one direction, you know where all the bullets are going to be flying from, it still sucks because basically every single class in this game has access to millions of grenades, all of these different explosive devices, and if any explosive device sneezes in the general direction of the Riot Shield, it's rendered useless. You guys know that when an explosion happens next to this thing, the glass breaks, and then anyone with 2 peanuts for a brain realizes that all they have to do is then shoot through that little slit right where your dome is, get that headshot multiplier, and quickly take you out. And while I'm not trying to claim that if we did have pistols all of a sudden in those circumstances, the Riot Shield would be amazing. Like, don't get me wrong, I realize it would still probably suck, but at least it would be a step in the right direction where you at least would have some fighting chance. You wouldn't just feel like a fish out of water the entire time, and maybe you would get lucky enough to take them out before they could kill you. And so, yeah, I think that your idea is a good one. Apparently, DICE would agree with you 100% because this was something that they were going to add into the game. But at the end of the day, they had to take in the old gen systems into consideration, which makes sense because a lot of Battlefielders play on those systems. But because of memory constraints, they weren't able to add in that mechanic. The next question for today comes from John, and it is, what do you think about adding in footprints? Example, if you are recently in the water or mud/dirt, that you would leave a trail of about 10 steps from where you exit said water/mud. These footprints would only stay visible for maybe 15 to 25 seconds and then disappear like dead players do. What do you think? I like this idea, and this could be the next step in evolution for DICE. I mean, they've always been about adding in and making their worlds feel more dynamic and alive, and if they made it so that certain sections of the environment changed or had footprints depending on if you were in them, that could add in a further layer of tactics that we currently don't have in the Battlefield franchise. If you're trying to be a stealthy little assassin, you would then need to avoid the muddy sections of the map. Like, you would have to play the map slightly differently than you do right now, because if the enemy sees some footprints on the ground, knowing that they only last for a couple of seconds, they may be able to use that information to their advantage, flank around, and then catch you by surprise. And so conceptually, it sounds cool. It sounds like it could add in a further layer of tactics, but I'm also a little hesitant because on a 64-player server, it may just get so convoluted. There may be so many footsteps, but no one's gonna take advantage of it. Like, no one is really gonna pay attention to it because no one's gonna have any idea of whose footprints they actually are. Conceptually, like I said, it does sound cool and I like the idea of it. I just don't know if it's really needed. If they wanted to do it for the next Battlefield game and they think that it could add in some cool value, then yeah, sure. I don't think I really have any problems with it. But right now, I just don't know if it's worth them taking the time to add in this new feature. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's Sunday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. Once again, if you would like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below or by sending me a Facebook and Twitter message. But until tomorrow, guys, have a good one and take it easy.